My buddy Michael O'Fallon has produced a video with Dr. James Lindsay and Dr. Peter Boghossian of the Grievance Studies Affair fame, and we're going to go over that and how this critical theory, intersectional politics, is going to impact and has impacted evangelical Christianity in America. This is Matthew Garnett. Welcome to In Layman's Terms.
If I wanted a plan, if I were going to design a plan,
oh yeah, I know
to
where you're
bring
going.
the whole thing down,
all of Christianity. Let's end Christianity.
all of
How do we do it?
Christendom. Yeah, how would you do it?
Make them woke. It'll eat itself from the inside.
Yep.
I have an evil plan to save the world for every man, and I think it's better than the way it's being run.
So we are going to take a look at this video from Sovereign Nations. Michael O'Fallon's done a great job covering this story. He's right on top of everything. I'm just in a lot of ways with my Federalist stuff, and what I'm doing here is just adding to it, ancillary. And O'Fallon's on the front lines of this thing, and so we're gonna take a look at it. We've got a lot of material to get to, so I don't want to take up a bunch of time pontificating here about the whole thing. You guys know my opinion on it. This is really my attempt to really wrap all this. It's not going to wrap up, obviously, but what we're trying to do is put a bow on this section of it and demonstrate once and for all that this is where this is going. And the reason I wanted to show this Sovereign Nations video from O'Fallon is because people that are outside of the SBC are seeing this. They're seeing this from a mile away. They've experienced it a million times. It's like the old adage, well, we're gonna do Marxism the right way this time, right? Well, every time Marxism, socialism has been tried, it's resulted in death and madness, essentially. So every time this critical theory, this cultural Marxism from Herbert Marcuse and the Frankfurt School has been tried, it destroys organizations. That's what it does. And really, that's the purpose of it. If you guys happen to catch my Issues, Etc. interview on this, that's exactly the point I make to Pastor Wilkin there, is that what's going to happen when this gets adopted is it's going to destroy that organization, because that's what this is designed to do. It's designed to destroy traditional institutions and reinstitute a more equitable, utopian type of institution. That's the idea. That's the purpose of it. That's why it's so dangerous that the SBC is not only messing around with this, but in a lot of ways wholeheartedly embracing it. O'Fallon does a great job bringing these guys in to testify to the fact that they've seen this over and over again, and that's really the value of this interview, and that's why we're going to cover it, and we're going to kind of cover it in a way that's fairly sweeping with a lot of video evidence and that sort of thing. So, but before we get to all that, I want to welcome to all of you who are listening on KNNA The Cross in Nebraska. Thank you very much to Pastor Poppy and everybody up there, Clint, for having us on KNNA The Cross. Also, thank you to Steve Kozar and themessedupchurch.com. You can get our podcast for free there. We're trying to post an essay about the podcast, a blog post, and then, of course, a link to laymanstermsradio.org where you can listen to the podcast for free. But alternatively, as we always say every week, we want you to go to laymanstermsradio.org and donate to the Kenyon Well Project. We very much appreciate being on messedupchurch.com because it's a great resource. If you are thinking something's fishy about North American Christianity, you're probably right. And you can go there, and we pretty much cover the gamut there, from soup to nuts. I'm more on the more cultural, political side of things there, and that's kind of my area of expertise. But you're going to find people that are covering a lot of what's going on in charismania, a lot of what's going on in evangelicalism, which actually my game plan is to get us back to a little bit of that here in the future, and just do some old-fashioned sermon critiques. But the point being, messedupchurch.com is a great resource. But we don't want you to miss donating to the Kenyon Well Project. It's a pittance that there are children at a Lutheran school in Kenya who have to carry water as part of their school curriculum. I say this many, many times, maybe each week, but it is. All while we've got enough listeners, if we get our stuff together and we donate $5, $10, or $15 a month, a podcast for 1 month, we could raise the money to drill this well. Plain and simple, easy as that. Or you can donate a one-time gift of $50. So please go to laymanstermsradio.org and donate to the Kenya Well Project. We need to get this done. We need to keep plugging away at it, and you guys aren't going to hear me shut up about it until we raise the money to get it done. So please donate to the Kenya Well Project. It's not that much money to raise, and we've got enough listeners to do it. We just got to get you guys motivated to donate. I know you've got many places you're donating. I realize that, and this is just another plea for that. But the unique thing about what we're asking you to do is we're not asking you to make a lifelong commitment here. You don't need to support in layman's terms radio. I don't make my living doing this. I make my living doing something else. So this is a one-time project that if we just raise the money for it, it can be over with. You can stop hearing me talk about it, and we can start celebrating the fact that these children, these very motivated children in Africa who want to learn Holy Scripture, who want to learn the Catechism, and want to break out of the cycle of poverty in Kenya. This is just one less barrier we can tear down for them. So let's get this one-time thing done. We get this done, boom, and we've got these children off and running. Yeah, and then I might come up with another charity for us to do. But I think if we can tackle this one, imagine what else we might be able to do. But let's just focus on that. I'm not asking you to support me. None of this money goes to me. It all goes to the Kenya Well Project. So please donate at laymanstermsradio.org. Okay, I have no time to mess around with any of this. I've got tons of video footage. We've got a show. But to kick things off, I've got a clip of an MMA fight, and I am not a fan of MMA at all. I think it's immoral, honestly. But to illustrate the point to kick us off and illustrate the point of really what we're going to be driving at in this episode is an MMA fight between a transgender woman transgender woman is a man. We're going to see a man put his knee on the neck of a woman. And I don't know when you grew up. This might be dating me. I might be dating myself here. But when I grew up, we were always taught not to hit girls, not to hurt girls. And this is precisely what's going on. This individual has gone through a rapid transformation physically when this particular fight is occurring, where he puts his knee on this woman's neck. But he's only been a, quote, woman for 2 years. And he really hurt some girls. And this is a mild example of what happened. He actually cracked one girl's skull. And so, there was just all kinds of controversy about this. But what I want to illustrate with this is all by design. This is all by design, every bit of it. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to walk through it. We're going to walk through Michael's interview with Lindsay and Bogosian and get you through all that. So we got to get to it. So let's make it happen here. Okay, so here's the video I was talking about. See, she puts her knee right on her neck. You kind of, if you're not quick to watch it. Yeah, so she chokes her out, basically. He, that's a man right there walking off of the octagon. And, she basically put that poor girl in a submission hold. And this is the before and after of this individual who calls himself Fallon Fox. Now, Fallon Fox was actually, what I would like to show you, and I just don't have time to, what I'd like to show you is the part where this guy got beat by a girl. That was really hilarious. This girl just beat the mess out of him because he's really not a very good fighter, from what I understand, from what everybody says. But this is the before and after right here. You can clearly see he's got the features of a man. He's got the strength of a man. And that did not disappear when he had all of his parts cut off and parts added and different hormones added to his body. It just didn't. Because when he started to fight MMA, he really started to hurt girls. And then finally, when he got more into the upper echelons of stuff and found girls who knew all the techniques how to fight, he got beat, which I find somewhat ironic and hilarious. But here's the thing. one thing that's going on with the T and the LGBT movement is that is coming into conflict with feminism, because now if this kind of thing continue, I mean, so the only MMA fighter that I can name by name is Brock Lesnar, and he's like this real burly looking, I mean, and he's one of the best MMA fighters of all times, from what I understand. And what if he decided he was a girl one day and he was going to fight MMA with the girls? Well, there would be no girls that could beat him. There'd be no women MMA fighters that could compete with him. It's the same thing is happening in high school sports, college sports. Okay, so this is a big problem. So it's crowding women out of gender-specific sports, and it's crowding women out of gender-specific areas. So the point being that there's a conflict going on, seemingly, this conflict with the sexual revolution. And I hear a lot of commentators talk about how, well, this is the left eating itself, and this can't survive. And what I want to tell you is this is all by design. But in order to demonstrate what I'm talking about, where even feminists don't realize what's going on here, let me bring back Julia Beck. We talked about Julia Beck a few months ago. And she is a radical feminist lesbian who is very much against the T and the LGBT. And let her talk about that, and then we'll comment afterward.
Well, when we get down to it, women and girls all share a biological reality. We are all female. But if any male person can call himself a woman or legally identify as female, then predatory men will do so in order to gain access to women's single-sex spaces, and this puts every woman and girl at risk.
That's from the beginning. I don't weigh in on this often because sexual politics is a morass, and it's not worth it, to be totally honest with you. But I have enough daughters that I care, and my instinct has always been this change in our society, which we never debated, the terms have never been clarified, is not going to be good for girls in the long run. Do you share that concern?
I definitely do agree. Like I said, this puts every woman and girl at risk of male violence, and this is already happening in many states. In many states, men can legally identify themselves as female and gain access to women's single-sex spaces. And sports is just one institution where men are taking titles, scholarships, and this is a problem.
So it seems like a real problem. Why wouldn't women's groups who exist to carry the banner for women raise the alarm about this?
Women have been speaking out about this for decades, but we have been effectively silenced. Many women, like myself, have been pushed out of spaces that we built, spaces that are intended to include us, simply because we acknowledge biological reality.
Do you think, I mean, you're lesbian, you are in the same acronym as a bunch of other groups, including people who are transgendered. Do you think that makes it more difficult for you to make this argument? I mean, it seems like this has been so politicized that you're expected to have a certain set of views that maybe you don't have.
I see where you're coming from. I would like to make a distinction here. The letters in the acronym share not much. The L, G, and B are based on sexualities. They're based on sex, biological realities.
Yes.
But the T is based on gender identity, which is not based in biological reality. In fact, I would argue that it's opposed to biological reality. The LGB is very different from the T, and I don't think it's fair to lump us all into the same acronym.
Do you find it astounding that it is considered an act of bravery to defend biology?
I wouldn't say so myself, but I guess that's where we are right now, and I hope more women stand up.
Last question, because I can't remember. What did they say to you? You were thrown off this commission. You were punished for saying this out loud. What was the rationale for it?
Frankly, there was no case made. My accuser said that they didn't have to make a case. One of the members of my committee argued that sex was a thing of the past. He said, frankly, science had progressed so far that sex was unimportant. I argued the opposite.
Sex is a thing of the past. Those are key words right there. So if you haven't heard me describe what postmodern deconstructionism is as applied to culture, go back and listen to my past episodes. I've gone over this a million times, and I don't have time to go over it again. But essentially, this is the goal, that science has gone past gender and sex. No, it hasn't. Science has done no such thing. The zeitgeist of the time, the philosophy of the time, the postmodern, critical theory, identitarian, Marxist politics, and I would say culturally Marxist politics, have gone past that. And that's by design. That is by design. See, the reason people get up in arms, like with Martina Navratilova when she came out against trans women, in other words, male tennis players competing in female tennis, when she came out against that, the reason she was castigated, and the reason why Julia Beck is on the outs, and a lot of radical feminists who can't make sense of this, is because they didn't see what was coming. See, had they known that their radical feminism would have led to a man putting his knee on the neck of a woman in an octagon, they might have thought twice about their agenda. See, that's kind of the tragedy of all this. And while I feel for Miss Beck, at the same time, they should have had a little more foresight. It would have been nice for them to research and look into. And so really, that's my point in showing Miss Beck's video juxtaposed to the Fallon Fox thing, because this is the thing that just frustrates me to death. I try to tell people this, because most of the time they're just useful idiots, and I don't want to put Miss Beck in that category, because I think the entire feminist movement has been taken by surprise with this. But one thing that has not, the other shoe hasn't dropped with the race thing yet. That's the next shoe to drop. See, it's very obvious what's going on with the sexual revolution. Oh, okay, so we've dissolved the binaries. Now, not only do we not have to worry about men being in a patriarchally superior position to women, we don't even have to worry about what the definitions of man and woman are anymore. We've dissolved those binary opposites. And again, go back and listen to my podcasts on that, on critical theory, Herbert Marcuse, and the Frankfurt School. It's done as far as American popular culture goes. Now, did the vast majority of Americans even have any idea what's going on here? We're going to talk about that too, by the way, that the vast majority of Americans have no idea what some of these terms mean. I mean, my mother will call me up and talk to me. I did my Issues Etc. interview, and she's listening to it, and she says, "What? Just maybe one day get with me and tell me what you're talking about," because when you're in this world, it's just these terms. They're commonplace, and people you think you're communicating what's going on, but the overwhelming majority of people have no idea what any of this means. It makes no sense to them, and we're going to demonstrate that later when we get to Ekemini Yuan at the Sparrow 2019 conference, when she talks about critical theory and race and that sort of thing, and just show you that where all this is going to go with race. And that's my baby. I have a deep and abiding concern for pulling people out of poverty, even what we would consider poverty here in the United States. This is something that is that I've always cared very deeply about. You all have heard me talk about this if you're familiar with the podcast. And so when I see this sort of thing coming around, I know this has nothing to do with any of that. It doesn't have anything to do with lifting people up. What it has to do is with putting people down. See, yeah, I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that history has shown us each and every time it's tried, whether it be socialism or an organization adopting things like critical theory, postmodernism, Frankfurt School, critical theory, whatever else. We've seen this time and again. It destroys organizations. And that, because that is what it's designed to do. See, it is designed to bring down all the traditional institutions so that this egalitarian utopia will rise up. But what people don't realize, and this is where Orwell is so good in the Road to Wigan Pier, when he talks about how those who care for the downtrodden, at some point they turn their guns on the privileged, and what they're looking for is not to see the marginalized raised up. That's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is to bring the privileged down. See, we just put everybody down on the same level, so everybody's equally poor, everybody's equally destitute, everybody's equally miserable. It's this dystopian thing, and that's what we see each and every time socialism is tried in any way, shape, manner, or form. And so that's what we have to fight against, because I want to lift people up. That is my desire. I want people to be lifted up from the margins, not for the privileged to be pushed down to the margins. That's a terrible vision, in my opinion. And that's exactly what critical theory, identity politics, and neo-Marxist, neo-cultural Marxist theory of the Frankfurt School type does. That's precisely their goal. And so the reason Miss Beck is confused about all this is because she didn't understand the agenda. See, and again, I don't want to call her a useful idiot. That's a pejorative in a sense, but understanding these things is complicated. Like I said, you start throwing these terms around, people don't get what's going on. They don't care to get someone. They just want to live their lives. And then they get caught up in something like this, and they realize, hey, wait a second, whoa, hold on, what happened? Just like Miss Beck. See, she created this organization in Baltimore that all of a sudden now, because she's not on board with the T, she's getting thrown off of it. And it's going to catch you by surprise too. All you people in the SBC particularly, and especially in the larger evangelical church in America, this is going to catch you guys by surprise. It's going to bite you in the butt, and I'm going to demonstrate that with O'Fallon's interview with Lindsay and Bogosian. But before we get to all that, let me hit Miss Yuan at Sparrow 2019.
The reality is that whiteness is rooted in plunder, in theft, in slavery, right? Enslavement of Africans, genocide of Native Americans. We're sitting on stolen land. If you're in America, we're sitting on stolen land everywhere in America. This is the reality of land that was stolen from Native Americans. We have to recognize that and acknowledge that. So that is not, so it's a power structure is what whiteness is. And so the thing for white women, in this, because we're women in here, to do is you have to divest from whiteness. You have to divest from whiteness, because what happened was that your ancestors actually made a deliberate choice to rid themselves of their ethnic identity. And by doing so, they actually stripped Africans in America of their ethnic identity, right? So I can sit here and say, I will be a Bibio in the new heavens and new earth. But you, Elizabeth, can't yet say that. But in my sanctified imagination, I believe that God will give you and my sisters, according to the flesh, will be given their ethnic identities in the new heavens and new earth. I believe that. Right deep down in my core, I believe that. And I pray to that end. Because we have to understand something. Whiteness is wicked. It is wicked. It always means it's rooted in violence. It's rooted in theft. It's rooted in plunder. It's rooted in power, in privilege, which we just saw 2 weeks ago with the college scandal. So I have receipts here. So the goal for our white sisters is to rediscover your ethnic heritage. So I'm not pulling something away from you without telling you to replace it. So the goal for you all is to recover what your ancestors deliberately, right, discarded. So that means return to whatever that ethnic identity is. Are you Italian? Are you Irish? Are you Polish? Are you Turkish? Whatever that was, you have to do that work to find out what that is. Pull into that. Learn what that cultural heritage is. Celebrate that. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a work on your part. But that is the work. The work is for you to divest from whiteness. And the work is also for people of color to divest from whiteness too. All right? And now we do that by not centering whiteness. That means like trying to actually begin to imagine a world where where your whole identity is not bound to oppression, it's not bound to which I think is hard to imagine because we live in a white supremacist nation. It takes a lot of work and you have to do a lot of unlearning. And I think that what is sometimes so revolutionary, well, at least one thing that might be revolutionary about Truth's Table is that on Truth's Table, myself, Michelle, and Christina, we do not center whiteness. You'll never hear an episode about white guilt. Like, let's talk about white guilt. We're not going to do that. We'll never do an episode on white privilege. We center the concerns and the needs of Black women. We are in some ways trying to dream up what a Black futures might look like apart from oppression. You know, and in some ways that's like, I think that's a glimpse of like what the new heavens and new earth looks like. It's like, man, what does it mean to live in a society that's peaceful, to live in a society where we're not subjugated, you know?
So, there's that. Now, I understood everything she's saying, I think. However, I can almost guarantee you that the overwhelming majority of that audience has no idea what it means to divest yourself from whiteness. Again, many of the folks that are trying to tackle this in the SBC, this is one thing. If friends in my SBC friends, if you're listening to this, and what I want to tell you is sometimes you look at a video like this, and when Miss Yuan talks about whiteness, what you think she means is skin color. Now, we've gone over this many times. Whiteness is not skin color. Not in critical theory, not at all. Whiteness is Western liberal capitalism, particularly the capitalism part. That's what whiteness is. That's what you have to divest yourself from. This is what Miss Yuan is saying, and I am convinced she is not a useful idiot. She knows what she's talking about. She understands critical theory based on postmodern ideas, founded largely going back to Nietzsche, even Rousseau in some ways. Anyway, not to chase that rabbit trail, but the point being, Miss Yuan knows what she's talking about. What she's talking about is divesting yourself from liberal capitalism, Western liberal capitalism. When I say liberal, I'm not talking about liberal in the sense that Miss Yuan is liberal. Miss Yuan is a leftist. And I can describe that as well. You've heard me talk about that too. Miss Yuan is telling you to divest yourself from American culture. And we have a culture here. We have a culture. What she's saying to do is divorce yourself from that and go back and find out, like, I'm German. I'm an Aryan German. Now, it's interesting because my ancestors, quote unquote, my great-grandfather immigrated here from Germany before World War I. So that means after right before World War I, right after slavery. So my family on either side didn't hold slaves. And before the Germans became Nazis. So it's not like he came here after World War II or even after World War I. So I'm safe, right? I shouldn't have to pay reparations to anybody. The point being, if I went back to my German heritage, and we do that. We do German food. But the thing of it is, if I'm just a normal person in Miss Yuan's audience here at the Sparrow Conference, I have no idea what she's talking about. So I have to lean into that. Lean into my German heritage. I don't even know what that means. I wouldn't even begin to know what that means. Now, as somebody who is intimately familiar with critical theory, liberation theology, and at all, I can tell you that I know what she means by divest yourself from whiteness, which is what I just stated. See? So, a couple things here. One is, this is the problem with the SBC. Nobody knows excuse my language, I'm just going to say this because I think it needs to be emphasized. Nobody knows what the hell is being talked about in issues like Resolution 9, which we're going to get to next from the SBC convention. Nobody knows what the hell Miss Yuan is talking about. No, I mean, very few people. You hear the kind of intermittent claps like, yeah, we should do that. That sounds great. But when she says divest yourself from whiteness, that the United States is a white supremacist nation, I guarantee you, even in this day and time, at a major evangelical conference for women like the Sparrow Conference, there are women sitting there going, even black women going, what is she talking about? I don't have any idea what you're talking about when you say that we're oppressed and suppressed and we live in a white supremacist nation. But I know what she's talking about. I know precisely what she's talking about. See, because the thing of it is that, so I'm a truck driver, right? Let me just describe this for you one time. I think I mentioned this one time before, but let me just describe what whiteness and blackness is. I'm a black guy. I may not look like it, but I am. And let me tell you how. I am a lower middle class, blue collar worker. I drive trucks for a living. Being a lower middle class, blue collar worker, according to Miss Yuan and critical theorists and liberation theologians, is a form of slavery. It's just a different form of slavery. That was Herbert Marcuse and the Frankfurt School's whole MO, is that guys like me have been duped into thinking that somehow I'm free, when all the while I'm just a slave at another level, right? Never mind the fact that I live like a king in a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on a lower middle class income. You know, we only basically have one income, but that's not the point. Point being, I live like a king compared to most people in other countries. But yet, these folks are going to try to convince you that really what you are is a slave. Because all capitalism is another form of slavery. That's all it is. It plunders, it destroys, it steals, etc., etc. All right. And they'll cite truths. We had slavery. We took land from Native Americans. We had Jim Crow laws. We had redlining. There was lynchings. There was police brutality, and it continues to this day to some degree. All those things are true. But here's the thing that never gets talked about, is before we got here, 1 out of 8 Native Americans were serving another tribe as slaves. You don't think that slavery wasn't going on before? I mean, people act like, slavery was this Western white invention. See, this whole idea that race was invented, no, it wasn't. That's a complete myth. I've been thinking about that piece for a long time. White and black is not a social construct any more than man and woman is. So watch out for that language. That's what convinced me of it. Finally, when I thought about it, that's why I brought in the Fallon Fox transgender idea, because that's the whole deal with the genderism thing right now, is that people are talking about gender as if it's a social construct. And now they're trying to smuggle that concept into the race debate and talk about how white and black, well, that's just a social construct meant to keep black and brown people oppressed. No, it's not. No, it's not at all. It's not that at all. Black and brown are descriptions of people's physical appearance. That's what they are. Race is a description of people's physical appearance, primarily. And then behind that, on occasion, you will run into a person who, because they have a certain melanin count in their skin tone, they have a certain cultural, political experience, etc. You'll find that. The point being that the categories of black and white were not created to oppress black and brown people. It's just not true. That's a myth. Any more than men and women, the categories of man and woman were created to suppress women. It's just not true. And it's a distraction from the real issues, which is lifting marginalized people out of their marginalized state to a higher place. It's a complete distraction from all that. So, Yeah, I don't think Miss Yuan is a useful idiot. She might be. But yeah, I'm not sure what she's after. I can't read her heart. All I know is what she means by whiteness is I'm a black guy. In her worldview, I'm the epitome of blackness because I'm a lower middle class working blue collar person. That's the same thing that Marx talked about. I'm one of the proletariat. See, they just changed the term. See, that's the postmodern sleight of hand. Now, we see that this is infiltrating evangelicalism on a whole. This woman speaking, Miss Yuan speaking at the Sparrow Conference. We see Resolution 9. This thing is on the rampage, and we're going to talk about it and then talk about possible solutions. But just to show you how dangerous this is and what happens every time it's tried, let me bring in the experts on it. This would be Dr. James Lindsay and Dr. Peter Boghossian being interviewed by Michael O'Fallon of Sovereign Nations. Here we go.
Pete and James, I believe you're aware of what happened with Resolution 9 at the Southern Baptist Convention several weeks ago. But I want to just read through some statements that I have taken from that resolution. It's quite long to read through, but I'm just going to go through some of the main points that make the case that the committee was trying to make. And this is addressing critical race theory and intersectionality, of which I think we would say that you have done more deep diving on this particular issue than just about anyone else. Let me start. Whereas, and this is from Resolution 9 from the Southern Baptist Convention, whereas critical race theory is a set of analytical tools that explain how race has and continues to function in society, and intersectionality is the study of how different personal characteristics overlap and inform one's experience. Whereas evangelical scholars who affirm the authority and sufficiency of Scripture have employed selective insights from critical race theory and intersectionality to understand multifaceted social dynamics. Whereas general revelation accounts for truthful insights found in human ideas that do not explicitly emerge from Scripture and reflects what some may term common grace. Whereas critical race theory and intersectionality alone are insufficient to diagnose and redress the root causes of the social ills that they identify, so stating that they do identify them, which result from sin, yet these analytical tools can aid in evaluating a variety of human experiences. Resolved that critical race theory and intersectionality should only be employed as analytical tools subordinate to Scripture, not as transcendent ideological frameworks. Can you just give me your opinions on hearing that?
I would tell you that you have a very lovely wooden horse sitting outside your gate. Every word of that sounds wonderful. Nice varnish on the wood, and what's inside is a hot mess. It is letting something in that is in many respects parasitic and in many respects designed to be divisive and to increase salience, awareness, focus upon issues that have a political nature tied to race politics for the purposes of pushing identity politics into whatever it's trying to be inserted. In this case, the Southern Baptist Convention or whatever organization wants to adopt this subordinate to that.
Which is the largest Protestant denomination in the United States.
Right. It comes in a pretty package. None of that sounds terrible, and it's all superficially true. It is a tool for analyzing race relations in society. There are other tools that one might consider to be more rigorous,
Right.
but it is a tool, and what that tool's composed of is, let's take a look at the word critical here. What does the word critical mean? The word critical means, in this context, looking at in extreme closeness, analyzing particularly the use of language, history, etc., in order to make problems related specifically to oppression more visible so that people will want to enact a revolution to overturn the power dynamics that are alleged to be a part of it. That's critical. Critical means, in a sense, complaining about in a specific way to affect a radical political agenda, to make problems visible that you wouldn't otherwise see. Now, obviously, there can be benefit to making problems visible, but it is a method that is specifically designed to focus on problems and only on problems. Then there's the theory side, critical race theory. This theory is not the word theory that you might hear from scientists. It's not the word theory that you might hear from, a lay person. I was like, oh, I have a theory about. This is a specific meaning of the term theory in the sense of sociology or social philosophy would be a better way to put it, which is supposed to be some kind of an explanatory structure. And in this case, critical race theory is directly derived from critical legal theory, which does the same thing with law and tries to pick apart where the law has been insufficient, make problems visible in order to effect a political change, and B, postmodern theory. And postmodern theory is this idea, among many other things, that knowledge is produced within various communities, unique to that community, that cannot then be evaluated from outside of that community. So in the case of critical race theory, the way that gets applied is that, say, a person of whatever race, people of whatever race I should say, not a person of, roughly have the same experiences in life of oppression based on their racial status, or of dominance if that race happens to be one that's considered dominant, white, and they roughly have the same experiences in life, so they roughly should have the same view of oppression, and that gives them special insight that is not available to anybody else. And so you have to defer to that as though it is true. You can't possibly question that or doubt that or demand a different form or more rigor or another layer or level of analysis, because that would be to foist another culture's process of legitimizing ideas upon a racial culture that doesn't necessarily embrace that. So the claim would be that that group, that identity group, has knowledge that can't be questioned from outside of that group. So you have no option other than to agree with it.
Okay, so there you go. That's precisely what Lindsay was saying right there is precisely what I've been saying all along. That what this is meant to do is to critique. Critique. See, I'm a critic. That's what we do here in layman's terms. Now, of course, we talk about apologetics, we talk about philosophy, these sorts of things. But essentially, I don't really offer solutions per se. Now, I can talk solutions and that sort of stuff. However, all critical theory is meant to do is destroy. And that's really the point I wanted, why I wanted to play that, and to show that so my Southern Baptist friends, mom and dad, this is something you should be worried about. And my buddy Pastor Tom Askell, who was basically Twitter mobbed about a month ago over a trailer he released that, is addressing this issue. You're not crazy. You're being gaslit. Plain and simple. And Dr. Lindsay, that's what I like about his forthrightness in this video, is he comes out and he says, I guarantee you, every time this has been implemented into an organization, it destroys that organization. And I'm gonna prove that to you here in a second, right? So, essentially, what we're looking at here is something that's going to destroy the church in America. the largest Protestant denomination in America, as O'Fallon was wont to put out, and correctly so. That's what it's after, and it's making some alarming inroads. Alarming inroads. So now check this out.
But when you said it, I was like, wow. I have had in the back of my mind that if this were at the height of the New Atheist movement, and when, you know, we were extremely involved in that, if I wanted a plan, if I were going to design a plan to bring, right?
Oh yeah, I know
to
where you're
bring
going.
the whole thing down,
All of Christianity. Let's end Christianity.
all of
How do we do it?
Christendom. Yeah, how would you do it?
Make them woke.
Yep.
It'll eat itself from the inside.
Yep. And then I'd be.
I'm not the old guard atheist I alluded to earlier. People can believe what they want. I'm happy about that. Let them. Then we'll talk. You know, we'll figure this out. We'll figure out what's true together.
But that's not what the goal is.
If I wanted to end the church,
they don't want to know what's true.
But if I were the old school angry atheist, it's like, let's just throw rocks at the cathedral till it falls down. I'd start making woke pastors and sending them in, because they're going to tear everything apart.
Yeah.
Because they're going to make everything about identity.
It's inevitable.
And that's all they talk about. Justice, justice, justice. What does justice mean? Justice means something to do with equity, inclusion, blah, blah, blah. What does inclusion mean? Inclusion means that nobody ever gets offended. How are you going to do that?
Yep.
Censor speech. So you don't talk about things. You don't. Being good, being white, something, complicity.
I'm telling you right now, we're
can't
giving you the
associate.
trajectory of your own demise. We're just telling you, this is what's going to happen.
As an old, if I was still the angry atheist that I was at one point in my life, that I think was a fool, I would. This is the plan that I would have hatched. Peter and I would have been like, we know what to do.
But now let's take perspective on that.
So there you go. That's two atheists telling a Southern Baptist, O'Fallon, that if they wanted to destroy Christendom, this is the plan they would go with. And folks, that's exactly what I've been saying all along. That's what this stuff is designed to do. And now, let me show you a little preview of where it leads.
A student who I knew pretty well called me over, and she said, do you know that there are people outside that door chanting for you to be fired?
We would like to reach out to students of color in the humanities as well as sciences that we are here to support. We want to dismantle anti-blackness campus wide. We want to give some sense of solidarity and provide safety and outside of our homes.
Will you listen to me?
Yeah.
Okay. No, not me. Please.
No, we're listening. Go!
Okay. I am committed to equity. I'm as committed, I believe, as anyone on this campus. I happen to disagree with other folks on this campus about the way there. Okay? But I'm not an unreasonable person. I'm not uninterested. I'm not uninformed about history. I know the implications of these things. I have arrived where I've arrived from a different route. I've arrived there through academic study. I know why racism happens.
We live racism. We don't have to study it to understand it. We live it.
And the issue is you think scientific proves everything. What about all the racist scientific theories they had about black people for so long? Explain that.
May I answer?
No.
It is not your
Listen. You're going to listen.
You asked me a question. I would like to answer.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Red, white, tears, got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Red, white, tears, got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! So you can't get this color.
Oh, seriously?
You don't block me. Out of my way. Out of my way now. Out of my way.
Do you understand? History could pivot in this hallway right now. If
Oh
my God! Listen to me. Yes, I know. History could pivot in the direction of the values that you are standing here for.
Yeah, resign.
What?
Resign.
I'm not resigning.
Okay.
email you sent
If
out.
I owe an apology, I will deliver it.
Wait, hey. Wait. Excuse me. So, wait, hold on. Can I get this straight? You were coming over here for Brett Weinstein because you were...
I got information
you
being
thought...
cornered by students.
Oh, okay, but not over here.
Not being cornered.
Okay, maybe you should have gotten better information.
I only get limited information.
Oh, okay,
so
well, we were in D. It's a very small campus.
You also need to apologize to Naima and Rashida.
I have no idea. We are not blocking him in any way.
There was room to leave.
What's that?
There was
plenty
room.
to
There was one group of students on one side of him, and then a small dispersed group on the other side.
One of the main protesters.
So there you go. All that takes is for this was a very small group of students at Evergreen who started these riots. All it takes is a small group of students motivated by a professor at Southern Seminary to decide to occupy that campus. That's all it will take. And you'll have an Evergreen on your hands. And again, this may sound alarmist, may sound like, oh, that could never happen on a Southern Baptist campus. This is where I'm a little concerned with Dr. Moeller's outlook on this. He doesn't realize, he's not smelling the blood in the water, I'm afraid, in some ways. At least that's true. This could very easily happen on any one of the Southern Baptist campuses right now, given the leadership that is present there. And so, again, if you don't believe me, let's go back to Lindsay and Bogosian, and they'll tell you what's going on.
I believe that watching some of this stuff play out might be very powerful for the people viewing this, and I would recommend watching Mike Nana's YouTube channel and looking at the canoe video.
Yeah, look at what happened at Evergreen. He has a 3-part documentary, Netflix quality on YouTube. Watch that.
He goes through, I mean, it's
See
so
how it
crazy.
happened.
I'm not even gonna, everybody has to get in this canoe and they're watching, it's a Native American. I mean, it's so utterly bizarre.
I don't know what they mean
at
by
an American university.
Yeah, by soft white intersectionality or whatever it is they're trying. I don't know what they mean by that for sure, but I can tell you that if whatever that resolution 9 is, whereas nice thing, whereas nice thing, whereas nice thing, we resolve to let's at least include critical race theory as a tool. If that, depending on how far down that road that goes, the Evergreen State College is at the end of that road. Yep. That's what's happened. That's what happens when it's institutional, when it's put into an institution and put into action, right, where a sufficient number of, especially the administrative class and the people in the pews, or the students, if you will, take it up.
Top down, bottom up.
That's what's going to happen.
It's inevitable.
Right. Squeezing the middle.
All right, so there you have it. That's where all of this leads, is to an Evergreen State College. And it does not take much. And then all of a sudden you've got, again, like I said before with Miss Yuan, the overwhelming majority of those people at that conference had no idea what she's talking about. Whiteness? Wait, because of this color of my skin, how do I divest myself from the color of my, I don't really get this. How do I get back into my cultural, they don't understand it. So the overwhelming majority of people don't even get what's going on here, but yet the vocal minority is what's dominating the conversation. All the while, we're not doing anything to lift people up out of poverty, out of marginalization. What the goal is here is to destroy. Remember what Dr. Lindsay said. Critical. That's the idea. To destroy. To subvert. Again, I always say, us Lutherans memorize the creed and its meanings according to Luther. And after every meeting, we say, this is most certainly true. Critical theorists, postmodernists, cultural Marxists, the key term is, this most certainly subverts. That's the key. What subverts? What criticizes to the point where it brings the institution to its knees. And you just saw that in that footage of Evergreen. Those few students brought that institution to its knees and forced two prominent professors to have to resign and file a lawsuit. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. If we can bring that, now Evergreen College is a small college, but I would not be surprised that if something like that happened, especially on the campus of Southern, where you had a small group of students who took seriously some of what is being taught down there, and they organized a riot like this, how that wouldn't ripple throughout the Southern Baptist Convention and bring it to its knees. That's what it's meant to do. And that's where it's going. And I think that's really the warning I want to send out to everybody. Now, what's the solutions to this? Well, I'm not sure we can stop it. My prediction is, and I'm a bit cynical on this, but that this is going to happen in the Southern Baptist. I'm not sure the Southern Baptist Convention can survive this. If it can, God be praised. We need the Southern Baptists, just like we need our Catholic brothers and sisters. Even though we disagree on fundamental doctrines, we agree on enough that we've held this country together for going toward 300 years now. But I just don't think that's going to happen. So what can you do? Well, go get a truck driving job. Be a loving husband to your wife. Be a loving father to your children, and make sure that your children are raised in the faith, and that when they get older, they will marry somebody and have children and raise them in the faith. That's the move, I think. Now, can we do some of this top-down stuff? I was having a good discussion about this with some of my brothers last night at a get-together. Can we do some of this from the top down? Of course we can. But it starts with you deciding that you're going to raise your family in the faith and raise them to keep their faith. Okay, got to quit for this week. A lot of material there, but I kind of wanted to bring all this together. My Federalist articles, my Issues, Etc. interview, all the podcasts we've been doing on this lately. There it is. Hopefully that's helpful to see the trajectory of what's happening here, and I'm not the only one saying this. Thank you to KNNA, The Cross, Nebraska. Thank you to Steve Kozar, themessedupchurch.com. Please go to laymanstermsradio.org and donate to the Kenny Well Project, and we'll see you next week.